Hello, welcome to South Beach Sessions. I'm saying this to this man right here and to you as well because I'm excited to have this conversation with Josh Johnson because, among other things, a hot comedian who's doing stand-up comedy differently. He's been an Emmy-winning writer for The Daily Show and other shows. I am fascinated how all this came to be. You're awfully young to have had some of the successes that you have now in doing the stage work that is different than just about anybody is doing these days because you're doing it topically. You're a content furnace. You're able to do comedy sets from club to club that change with the news. That's not something that's been seen too much in my experience in this field, which means you're trying to change the form a bit, are you not? And thank you and welcome for being on the show. If I have anything wrong and have talked at you, please tell me because I'm trying to tell the audience who you are and why I admire you because I don't understand how any of this came to be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just don't do anything else, so that helps. Like if you just are writing as much as you can all the time, then you do end up in a place where you have a lot to bring to the next show for the next night or the next city. And I think because I am like naturally off by myself a little bit, this is something that's been leading up to this moment of how I've always been mixed with what I'm really passionate about, which is stand up, and not necessarily just politics in general, but the way that people are digesting the news and everything. Because I think that sometimes we don't give ourselves credit that something is happening, but it's not really new, and so you hear people go on and on about like a new development of a story. But then if you look at the wider context of history, you see that this is really just a big part of it is cyclical. And I think that one puts me a little bit at ease to joke about it, but then also makes it so that hopefully I bring something a bit fresh to the idea.
Can you explain to the people the process of I don't do anything else, all I'm doing is writing, that makes you somebody who's curious about the world? This is a unique time in the world. There are a lot of people at this trough trying to make things. I imagine you're super stimulated, so it doesn't even feel like work to you. It's just a bombardment of stimuli 12 hours a day of things on television that are happening that aren't funny, but are funny.
Sure. I mean, I think when I say I don't really do much else, like I clearly eat and sleep and stuff, but I just mean I try to keep myself as curious as possible about not just like an individual story, but about how we get to certain places. So if I see something that is maybe on CNN or something like that, and there's already a sort of wide narrative of the way the story is being told, because it's impossible to share information without some form of like moving the needle, some form of either a person's interpretation or their biases comes into play.
Distortion.
Yeah.
There's no way to do all of this without a distortion from everyone's prejudices.
Yeah, and so as soon as you see that presented, you know that, okay, this is CNN's take on the story. And then you watch more news, and you maybe see an MSNBC or a Fox News, News Nation, whatever it is. And they're all talking about the same thing, but they either have different pundits on to discuss it, or the anchor themselves are giving the information to you in a very specific way. And so all of it, the story as it exists, is malleable enough that it's either funny how the thing is being reported, or maybe there's a missing piece of context that is not likely to be talked about because it doesn't fit the sort of general narrative of that station, or it's just maybe a misread, at least in my opinion. So then when I talk about it, I try to find the angle that hasn't been spent up. And then through doing that, usually there's already like a humorous bend to it. And then from there, you just add the jokes, as many as possible, wherever you can, and you tag it all up. And then you've now brought something new over something that could have already felt a little bit played out or old, because the news cycle now, with all of the like savviness that people have around the internet and where they want to get their information, and once they get it from there, they've sort of got it. So if you get your news from, like, let's say Facebook or Twitter or something like that, it's very easy to get 50 different angles in the matter of 10 minutes just reading down a thread. And so I think that's one thing that, whether you want to call it mainstream media or legacy media, has not caught up to, is that there's never going to be a way for them to give the information as fast as social. And so adding the extra context of what everyone on social is saying about a story, then you also have hopefully now an even finer needle to thread, but you'll really be saying something specific if you can manage to walk the tightrope of like what everyone's already said.
I'm going to test this with you right now, because
Okay.
one of the things I want to show the audience is what an evolution this is in the stand-up comic, to have this sharpened a tool on things everyone's talking about. Can he or she find the things that are different and stimulating? So I'm going to go through 5 of these with you. Okay. I'm just going to hit you with topic du jour and see what it is that you got on any 5 of these things. So if I present you just, here's Elon Musk.
Okay.
What do you do with all of that?
Like just Elon Musk right now?
Just Elon Musk right now, the minute that we're speaking,
Yeah.
as he's chasing Donald Trump all around the country, clearly trying to buy the power of being the guy who runs America.
Yeah, so I think one thing that's really interesting about Elon Musk, at least today, in the day that we're talking, in the minute right now, is that while he's trying to do all these things that you would at least think have some sort of influence on how he's going to run his business and some overall profit that he's planning for the future, on like, if he can get the right contracts, if he can get the right H-1B visas from Trump and just get his blessing to move his business however he wants, then I think anyone who is like capitalist in their mindset can understand why he's doing that. What's hard to understand is that while he's doing all of this stuff, he's been lying to the gamer community about being maybe the number 2 or 3 gamer in the world, in a very like in a very encapsulating game. Like, you need hundreds and hundreds of hours to even be good at this game. And he said that he was like top 3 in the world, and then he got exposed for lying about it. So it's like so super jarring that someone who's already the richest man in the world, that's going to be one of the most powerful people in the world with his proximity to,
they're all high school kids,
still needs to feel cool to people who like like, I know gamers who are like, I really am not doing anything else. I don't know why he needs to impress me. That feels weird. And so then I feel like that becomes your angle. You go down the thing of like, this man is going to be able to get whatever tax breaks he wants, tax breaks he doesn't need because he's already the richest man in the world. And yet somehow there's still a part of him that's like, I really wish I took this person to the dance. It's like that to me shows me a few things. One, that like, he's not really this like big, scary monster, evil genius or anything. He's like a kid. He's like a hurt kid. And then 2, clearly I don't need all the money in the world, because the dude with all the money in the world is like still hung up about stuff that I feel like I've let go of. And so now you have your angles where maybe, unless they've been beat down, you now have something where it's like, here's an interesting thing, or here's a thing that is a completely unrelated story, but it's about Elon, so it adds context to the other thing that's
Would you
happening.
do this with Bezos as well? If I offered you that as the second item for your chewing on, just Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, so I mean, right now he's kind of like the quietest of the 3 like tech billionaires who have really buddied up to Trump. I mean, in different forms. Like, Elon kind of came in hard and was like, I'll help you campaign, and I'll show up to rallies and stuff like that. Zuckerberg was a little bit more recent, and he kind of came out complaining about Biden and about being, what he felt like was sanctioned and being censored and stuff. And now he's all seemingly potentially pro-Trump. I'm not going to put that on him if it's not true, but it seems like he's really gung-ho about like getting into like the MAGA culture. And then Bezos, who has been the quietest, all he's supposedly done is killed like one endorsement of Kamala Harris from the Washington Post. So now, to me, Bezos is like the one who's the most gently trying to get in. Like, he's got his like seat at the inauguration, but other than that, he's kind of chilling. And I think Bezos, among all of these people, is the one who like believes in space as the real option. Like, I think he might dip. We may one day not see Bezos anymore.
Really?
Wonder what
Just-
happened.
just like that.
And he's been on Mars for like a year. Like
Okay.
that's what I think about Bezos. What I think about, because he's really like the quietest moving of all these people. Even when he got ripped quietly. He got ripped the way Chappelle got ripped. Remember when Chappelle was like doing Chappelle's show and he was skinny, and then like 8 years passed and he was just, there was that picture of him on a skateboard.
Yes. I saw him in Miami down here. His arms were enormous.
Yeah. Bezos did the same thing. This dude was like kind of balding, trying to sell books on the internet. And then he became really rich, and then he shaved his head fully, which was a good move.
Leather jackets, like yeah, it's the same high school thing. They're all high schoolers, right?
He
They're
went
all
away.
they're trying to wrap insecurities, normal human frailties, in billions of dollars.
Yeah. I think it's, one, I think $1 billion is generally too much money. I don't see how, like, one credit that I'll give some billionaires is that I can't imagine a world where like a normal person, which a lot of these people aren't normal people. They've kind of hidden the $1 million, multi-million dollar or background of loans that they got to like prop them up to at least project to this sort of success, right? But let's say you are a normal guy and you come up with a good business and you get investors and you do your series of investing and everything like that. Then you hit this like $1 billion valuation, which still doesn't mean you have $1 billion. It just means your company, if somebody bought it today, would be valued at about $1 billion, which might not even be what you get. Somebody might try to undercut you. But then you build up to the multi-billion dollars to the point where now you can live off of your own stock and not pay any taxes because you're living in debt, right? Because you're living off of a loan from when you sell your stock. And all of that being said, I think that the fact that like no human needs and no like Maslow's hierarchy of needs goes away with enough money is kind of why I'm good chilling where I'm at. It's like I'm good wearing the same thing every day. I think that is like one thing I've seen like Bill Gates do is like wear the same thing every day. I'm like, that's just easier, right? And so I don't know how more of these people, they're clearly, some of them are out of their minds, but I'm surprised they're not more out of their minds in like a let's try crack sort of way. You know what I mean? Like you already can afford everything. I don't know why you need to go to space. I do wonder why more of them aren't doing like the most insane drugs. Like, develop me a drug and I'm going to take it. I'm going to get very high. I don't know if I would do that if I was a billionaire, but I'm surprised more billionaires aren't doing that exact thing.
How about Diddy?
Diddy is
What just happened to you? Now, I'm sorry. Forgive the transition. It was clunky, and I hit you with just 3 words, and there's a lot I unspooled at your lap there.
Yeah, well, I mean, out of everything you've asked me, Diddy has the most. So I do feel like, one, I'm still wondering who else is like nervous about the trial. Someone who hasn't been arrested, someone who hasn't been subpoenaed, because Diddy had parties. These were parties. And I don't know about you, but I've never partied with like 3 people. Lots of people are at these parties. So people know things that haven't been asked yet, and they're very worried about being asked. And so I feel like when I look at Diddy updates, I'm more thinking about where Diddy is in the process of like getting to trial and all that stuff. But I know that there are some people just looking at every update, just holding their breath, hoping their name doesn't come up.
How could they not be?
You know?
Like, I mean, you would think that all of these parties are total bacchanalia and that famous people behaving poorly because we're talking about Bezos and Musk, but now make it somebody who gets all of that in their 20s and comes into billions of dollars with whatever it is. I've got to feel alive, get to Mars, or let me see if I can abuse my power all over the place.
Yeah, and also, I mean, Diddy's lawyer has maybe the most work cut out for him in the history of law, because I don't know how a lawyer already they've made one claim that the tapes that Diddy was making of people without their knowledge, by the way, is somehow proof that everyone there was consenting. And I'm like, that's so I'm not a lawyer, but that seems so wildly out of pocket to make as a claim that I'm like, maybe I could be a lawyer. Like, it gives me hope that if you could just say whatever and hope it sticks, then if that's what law
Well,
is.
how do you defend this? How the hell do you defend any of this?
Yeah, I mean, you do your best, but I just feel like with Diddy, it's like I'm surprised they're not trying to plead everything. Like, the fact that they're like, my client is innocent. Why would you say he's innocent? That to me is like the most jarring. Like, if I was Diddy and I was watching my lawyer, I'd be like, like, obviously you then being caught would wish that you didn't do any of the stuff that you did. But at the same time, now someone has to defend you. And like, it is hard to come up with something, because then the most out of pocket questions are being asked of Diddy's lawyer because of what Diddy is accused of and or did. You know, so then they'll be like, why was Diddy here at this time with this person? And then like, even like the thing with Kid Cudi's car is genuinely insane. The thing that, like, before Diddy was ever arrested, and then somebody's like, hey, I think Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car. And then Kid Cudi is like, look, more than likely. I'm like, how? Guys, how do you? I don't know how you defend Diddy, but if there is a way, if someone comes up with a way, I think it will be like a landmark case in law if you're able to effectively defend Diddy, because it would be different if somebody was just being accused of a series of crimes in one thing, right? Like, if someone's on trial, like Jeffrey Dahmer's on trial, he's on trial for like basically being a serial killer, you know? But that's like one specific thing. So if you can prove he's not a serial killer, you've already cleaned him of like all this stuff. Diddy is being accused of so many crimes. You would think that he did most of crime since he became popular, you know?
Well, what do you think is true and not true in wherever it is that the pathology gets completely contaminated on fame and wealth, whether it's Bezos or Musk, or in a way that would make Diddy comfortable enough to think problem resolution is blowing up Kid Cudi's car because that's how I live, because and you can have all the rumors around, maybe I did kill Biggie or Tupac. You don't know. Like, if we're like, seriously, when we're getting to these distortions of, you give the billionaire so much money, he wants to live on Mars. Here, Diddy, here's everything Earth has to offer in your 20s. Yeah. Now what?
I mean, I've said this on stage before, and it is something that I genuinely believe. No matter who you are, like listening to the show or like anyone that I think about in their lives, I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, hope that like 3/4 of your dreams come true. Like, just almost all of them, but not quite. Because I feel like when all your dreams come true, or when you have all the money in the world, that is when you lose your mind, and usually not in like a fun way. You know, like every once in a while you'll hear of a billionaire you've never heard of before that, like, maybe they're not the most like philanthropic person, but they're like, oh, I just want to make the best candy. And you're like, okay, Wonka, you know? But by and large, it that much power, money, influence, anything, even if it's like happenstance, it leads to something that's like very bad for other people, right? So you look
and
at
for them, and for them, it seems like unhappiness to arrive at all your dreams, not have any more dreams, and then romp off on criminality or whatever insanity it is, because your human experience is, I can dream no bigger than where I've already arrived.
Yeah, and I mean, most people don't have to come up with more dreams. There's plenty of dreams they're never going to get. So, you know, if you on a random Tuesday needed more dreams, you'd probably lose your mind too. You'd probably be like, yeah, I've told people about it before. It's like, I don't know if Musk, I mean, I definitely know what Musk has done with Twitter and how he's leveraged it to be this sort of information, disinformation platform towards his own ends, right? I don't know if that was always the plan, if I'm being honest. I feel like he woke up one day and was like, what if I just like owned all the talking? And then he bought Twitter, or he joked about buying Twitter and then they made him buy Twitter. I don't know if it's, I don't know
It
if
is.
it's
It
like,
can be. I like thinking about it that way.
you
I've
know?
achieved all my dreams. You know what
Yeah.
I'm going to do now? I'm going to buy all the talking. Watch me.
Like, I think that Mondays are difficult enough. Imagine if you had a Monday coming and you needed new dreams. I think it would, I don't know if it's a key to happiness, you know?
I'm going to get to a couple of the other topics du jour, but when it comes to your dreams, whatever it is that you were dreaming about when you were a kid, how many of them have you arrived at? How many of them have you exceeded?
I have some very bad news for you. I'm almost there. I'm almost like out of dreams. So next time you talk to me, I might be out of my mind.
We'll do this on Mars. It'll be a Mars session that you'll because you've how old are you? Forgive me, I don't
I'm 34.
know. Okay,
Yeah.
so the people you're working in circles to have learned some things in show business that make you somebody who's had a lot of good fortune that is also earned. So what were you dreaming of when you were a kid? What were you studying to be? What did you imagine your life was going to be?
Yeah, so I always wanted to do stand up. I just didn't know that it could be a job in a way. And when I went to college, I studied design, and I used it for a little while, but ultimately I moved to Chicago to start doing comedy, and sort of built from there, and then moved to New York and built from there. I think that my general dreams now is just to really be doing what I'm doing now, but at a more efficient, better, higher level. You know, I think it's a dream of every comedian to get better, and now I feel like I have a chance to really build community and culture with the people that enjoy my work and the people who are out there struggling. I think that, you know, to some degree and in every way, we've already covered it with the billionaires. Everyone suffers, so there's no need to suffer alone. If there's already something that happens to everybody, then why have it happen to you by yourself, or why like suffer in silence and stuff? And I feel like comedy is the thing that undercuts all of that suffering, at least for a little while, you know. And I think that if I can get better at comedy, if I can get better at building community, then I think that that's the sort of world-shaping stuff that has lasting impact even after I'm, you know, gone. And I don't know, you know, change the world's a whole like set of bigger issues and problems than I'm like smart enough to tackle. But I think that you change your community, and then that sort of impact blossoms out. And though I mean, I think that's my dream right now. You know, I like what I wear the same stuff every day. I don't drive, I don't really do cars or anything like that. Like, if I can learn more effectively how to build community with the people who come to the show, or the people who don't come to the show but watch online, or if I can make sure that some of the dopest people that I've met that just enjoy my work get to meet each other and go off and make their own thing, I think that I'll be really happy with the work that I've done. So those are the main dreams right now.
So I've got it right. So the North Star is change the world and also become a monk of comedy community stylings, where you welcome in. You want to change. And I'm not being facetious here when I say
I don't think
your North Star, because you mentioned a couple of times now, I wear what I wear. So you're fairly obsessed with the craftsmanship of what you're doing and its impact. And what you're saying is, if I can make people laugh and have community, that community will listen to me at times that I have important things to say, and that's lovely, and I'll just keep building that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even need them to listen to me. I think that I just want them to sort of like have each other. I don't even know if I'll always say anything worth listening to. I think that if, you know, sometimes you remember the person that introduced you to your best friend. Yeah, I mean, maybe because you're still friends with them, or maybe because of the situation, the happenstance, whatever. And that's the one of the main goals is to, when I say community, I mean like the idea that, yeah, maybe these people met at a show, but maybe they all became friends, exchanged numbers, and now maybe they come to another show of mine. Maybe they never come to another show of mine, but they have someone in their life now, and then I was able to influence that with what I do, because, you know, at the end of the day, comedy's only really as important as like it is to the people that watch it.
Who
I don't
taught
think,
you all of that though? Like where is that you didn't just come upon that, did you? Is that's hand me down from somewhere, or who influenced you there?
yeah, I mean, my grandparents, my grandma, my grandma especially, my mom, my aunt, my dad. I've been very blessed with good family and with good, not just like opportunity, but with good mentorship and everything, and knowing what influence does to people and for people. And so if you're not careful with what happens as you gain influence, it all becomes stuff that happens to you as opposed to things that you can do for someone else. And so I try my best. I'm not perfect, and it's all like very new. You know what I mean? Like all this stuff is like at least where I am now is a year old. So it's not as
You've
if
been
I'm
touring for a year, but you toured. You
Yeah.
also toured with Trevor Noah before that. But your own voice, your own economy, your own things. You're growing into those now,
Mm-hmm.
right? You've always been a writer for others, correct? You've written for yourself as well, but you wrote for Fallon, you wrote for Conan. Now you are writing for you. It's a totally different proprietary thing, right?
Yeah.
And comedies also tends to be selfish, does it not? Like one of the things that I've seen in that world is what you're describing there. Most people are out for themselves. I know you're out for yourself as well, but it's not in service of any kind of community so that they could be spiritually aligned with the laughter.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody does it for their own reasons. I feel like some people do comedy to sort of heal themselves, and some people do it to even if you like I'm also not trying to make it this like esoteric movement of like social consciousness or something. I genuinely believe that like making people laugh is important because when you laugh, you feel no pain. And so I'm not smart enough to be a doctor. I'm not dedicated enough or savvy enough to be one of the quote unquote like good politicians who would probably just get like lost in the ether anyway. I'm good at this thing. I'm good at talking to people and bringing an angle on a story that hopefully makes them laugh. And if this is the only thing that I'm like really good at, then here's all the things I'd like to do in life, and let's see if we can connect them to get to that thing. I sometimes like comedians do get a little bit too like on a high horse about what comedy is or what it does for people or anything. And I'm not trying to do that at all. I want to make people laugh because I feel like one, when you're laughing about something, you can actually enjoy it even if the thing is painful. And two, I think that when something even as goofy or dumb as a joke can be, when you can like talk to someone about a joke, you can build that shared relationship. And that's my way of doing it. So I also don't want to make it sound like I'm like trying to be, I guess something bigger than I am in a way. I'm just having fun doing comedy. This is all the stuff that I hope happens while I'm doing comedy. So it's where I focus my attention.
How did those people in Alexandria, Louisiana, when you mentioned them, family of all kinds, how were they supportive? You've mentioned how they influenced this shaping, but how were they supportive of a job? This is a tough way to make a living, all of it.
Yeah,
With
sure.
writing, it's not poetry. Like poetry is a harder way, but
Yeah.
but you want to take all your talents and you want to do what with it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, no one was ever not supportive, but if they were reasonably worried. I think it's fair to be like, oh, okay, you're like working this grocery store job and then you're doing comedy at night. And then I think that it wasn't until I got hired at Fallon that I think people really understood that you could like make some form of living doing it. So, no one was ever like outwardly discouraging or anything. But I think even with my dad was like very excited about me getting into comedy and stuff. But when my dad was alive, I didn't have any major successes or anything. So he was just that was just such a genuine support of like, oh, cool. Okay. I don't even think he was thinking too much or worried too much about what I was doing to like pay the rent, as far as like whether it was the grocery store job or like odd jobs here and there. I think he was more like, oh, that's cool. I enjoy comedy. Hopefully you'll meet people that I like. I've enjoyed my time at every job that I've had because I found a way to cling on to every bit of positive feedback, every good experience, all my coworkers who brought me joy and made me better. And so I feel like everyone's going to have their experiences and things to say. I think that for me, when I look at making creativity a job in any form, right? There is a certain amount of play that a person within themselves can potentially lose, because now I'm not just doing this. Like, I'll give you a good example. When I did a little bit of freelance work, like just trying to almost like it was like selling Onion-esque articles, like satire articles, to sites, right? Like that for a little while.
Hard work right there.
I was trying to like, okay.
That's a hard hustle.
Yeah, it was insane. It was very dumb. I should not have even tried to do this. This is before I was working at Fallon. This is before I was like doing.
You're trying to figure out, how can I get paid for writing things?
Yeah.
You're just trying to figure out the economy of where can I get payment for making people laugh?
Yeah, and so at the time,
writing funny's hard, man.
I was in Chicago. I think my rent was, I was cheap too. My rent was like $550 because I was like roommate and in a cheaper part of town and everything. So $550. All the places I was looking up, they would pay you anywhere from $20 to $50 for an article if it got approved. But there was still an editor, so they could still tell you, hey, go back, fix this thing, whatever, right? But in my head, I was like, all right, if I do like 11, 12 articles, I should be solid. But I haven't even eaten yet. I'm just like 11, 12 articles. This should be good. But I love satire and I love writing and I love what these sites do. Right. So,
but no safety net of an employer.
No safety net of an employer.
So wait, so this is crazy. So now you're in crazy town. You're going to try
100%.
and you're going to try and believe in your dream, but you've got to write the rent.
Yeah.
You've got to conjure from a piece of paper the money that you are printing to pay a landlord for rent.
And this is all, by the way, with the hope that like this is all, by the way, with the hope that the things I'm writing, no one else is writing. No one's writing it better than me. I'm picking good topics they're interested in. Like, this was like pie in the sky insane.
And need 12 buyers so you can have $240
every month. like
yeah, nuts. So, nuts.
So
math that doesn't work.
Exactly. As soon as you are doing that, you are having less fun doing comedy. And so I feel like anytime you take on comedy, entertainment, whether it's music, any form as a job, you are adding something extra to the relationship you have with that art. And so I think that it's going to be very hard to be making something with your friends and have it stay, like if you're talking about a working environment, like working for you or something like that, it's going to be very hard for anyone who brings a passion for what the job is in their personal life, and they're going to bring that passion to you and make this whole show and everything around your business better. It's going to be hard for them to do that with rent on the line, with, you know what I mean? And so
everything is less fun with money concerned.
Exactly. And so I think a lot of like a lot of what it means to make money off of your art is going to entail having to make real concessions with what you expect every day to feel like. Because if somebody just told you had a stipend, right? If somebody was like, look, I want to be like even old school, like when artists had patrons, right? And they were like, look, your housing, your food, and maybe a little bit of leisure is going to be taken care of monthly. I just want you to create. Even in those relationships where you straight up had a patron who made sure you were going to be taken care of, it was a blank check back in the day, like Roman times, right? Blank check. You still had a pressure of like, well, I don't want to offend my patron. I hope in the painting portrait that I'm doing of their family, the daughter likes how she looks. So there's never going to not be something to be in your head about around making entertainment, you know?
Art and business commingle uneasily and with contaminants.
You got to remember, I was working at a grocery store right before I got hired. And then even as I was hired, because I didn't quit right away, So then I was still like, hey, if this
What
like,
are you doing at the grocery store? Wait a minute. You're writing the Tonight Show monologue while doing what at the grocery store?
oh, stacking grapes and like, ringing people up and stuff like
So
that.
you're
So
you're
there's like,
going in there and then you're writing you're cutting up 40 jokes and they're using 3 of them in the monologue, or
yeah, I let there be a little bit of overlap just because I was still in disbelief I got hired. Yeah,
well, how did they find you though? How does all of that end up happening? Like, so
yeah.
how much crawling is there? Is that your big break? Is that like,
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I would say because I had a manager at the time, and my manager at the time reached out to the comedy booker at Tonight Show, and we sent tape, and then that tape, I believe, got seen by the head writer at the time. And the head writer was like, oh, we like these jokes. These are just jokes I'm doing to hopefully perform on Tonight Show. And so they were like, oh, would he want to send in a packet? And so that got back to me. And my manager was like, hey, look, you can tell them you're not interested and you just want to perform on Tonight Show and be about your way. Or you could write a packet's worth of jokes, like monologue jokes, sketches, desk pieces, all these different stuff, any ideas, right? And so I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I'll do the packet. I'm working at the grocery store, so I'll do the packet, right? And then sent that off. And maybe a week or so later, I didn't even think anything had come of it. Low key, I actually thought I had maybe blown my opportunity to perform because I was like, oh man, what if they didn't like my jokes? They didn't like my jokes so much that actually like, we don't like the jokes we liked before we asked you to, oh, they don't want anything to do with me. I was in my apartment with my roommates just like, oh, what did I do? And then sure enough, I get a call from my manager being like, they want another packet of jokes, but this time is a tighter turnaround because that's what a day's
that's what the
work
game
would be
is.
like.
Mhm.
And so then I did that. And they brought me in for an interview. And then after I interviewed, I found out a few days later that I got the job, right? And so once again, I'm like this kid that's moved to New York that is like so like shell shocked that I'm even in this situation, that I'm just trying to like have the best time possible, meet as many cool people as I can. Like I'm, even to this day, the writers that I worked with at Tonight Show shaped a lot of like how and what I do now because it was the place that taught me to not be like precious. It's like you will write 75 jokes and it's only possible for 3 of them to be used because of literally time,
Yeah, if you're lucky, one of your jokes will be used. It's a failure game, and you're going to be grateful for it. Because what's interesting about what you're saying is I'm sitting here talking about the pressure cooker and how hard it must be to write to make money, and you're telling me some form of, do you have any idea what I was doing at the time and what I come from? Like I've arrived there. Like the pressure cooker's my dreams. Like I'm not going to complain about what the environment is. I got a job that's not at the grocery store and isn't in Alexandria, Louisiana.
Yeah, because even now I kind of feel like I'm only speaking to my to like my thought process when I go to any job, or when I look to, even when I put something online or something like that, because I have people asking me, they're like, oh, now people expect you to post, do you feel pressure? And I feel like my feelings with that when it comes to like what I'm doing and like the community that I'm trying to build and everything, and how there's so many places you can fall and you can fail people, is that to me pressure is a privilege. I did what I've been doing for so long and nobody cared. So now people actually like want to know what I'm up to, or they care what I have to say.
But you're a content furnace. Like comedians tend to be precious about this stuff. They sculpt and hoard, and then they unveil in 3 months, right? Like you're belching jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean to cheapen it by saying that. I'm saying
you.
like you have refined and honed a craftsmanship that this is the thing you like to do, so it doesn't even feel like work to you because you enjoy it.
Well, also, it's like, I think that what late night helps you do eventually is not be as precious, because I feel like there have been jokes where in whatever environment I was in, the head writer would even say, I really like this joke. We literally just don't have time. So then you see how like it's not even always a merit-based thing. There's so many different things involved with what show gets created for an audience that they watch and enjoy. And so to be part of that is something special, but also taking away the lesson that I took away from it of like, oh, just because something doesn't get used doesn't mean that it wasn't good. Just because the outcome I wanted to have happen didn't happen doesn't mean that's a knock on me as a writer or as a comedian. So then when now it's all up to me and it's all my show, when I go out and I tour or when I post things online, I'm less precious with I'm less precious with giving it away because I've had to be less precious with like losing it to a certain degree. And so that's kind of how I got here, which is why I say that like every experience that I've had that's led up to this moment has like, it felt like everything was to get me where I am now. And I'm sure where I am now is to get me somewhere else. So I'm not too stressed about like, I guess how I share that stuff, because I feel like, one, thankfully, the feedback is letting me know I'm on the right track. But two, I look at what it was like when it wasn't my show and I wanted to get this joke out and it just wasn't possible, you know? So I'm just grateful that people are enjoying and watching.
I have 2 follow-ups on specifics.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first joke that made it on the Fallon show? Do you remember what it was?
That is a great question. You would think I would remember.
I've got a follow-up. If you can't find that one, if it's hard to find, that's fine. Do you have one that didn't make it that you're like, come on, that one, or you recycled it somewhere else because you're like, that deserves, that one should have gotten, that's as clever as I can be.
Yeah. I mean, sorry to let you down on both fronts. I've not.
You take too many shots to remember them.
Yeah, a little bit. I definitely remember the feeling of like Jimmy saying my joke for the first time, and it was like on my first day as well, so it was like such a great start. Like first day at the job and I got a joke on, I was like so excited about it. And then once again, the monologue team, the writers, not only welcomed me with open arms starting out as this like kid that just got hired, but they also took the time, which I thought was really special, to like, some of them listen to my comedy album just to like try to get to know me ahead of time. And like, it just felt like I was already welcomed in as soon as I sat down at my desk. And then the way that a few of them really like celebrated the fact that I got a joke on my first day, and they were very like, oh, that's great. Like good for you. You came in, you don't even know where the bathroom is, and you were able to get a joke or two on, is like pretty big. So
yeah, it's unusual.
Yeah. So now I really wish I would remember it.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
You failed. You failed spectacularly.
No,
but
that was
all
really
I care
bad.
about is that I asked a good question.
Yeah,
So
no, it was a
all
great
that
question.
matters.
I'm sorry that I let you and the listeners
only
down.
thinking of myself in that circumstance.
No,
Don't care
it's
about you
okay.
or the audience. I'm
No.
just thankful that I asked a good question.
You did do well, and I was bad.
I really blew a plume of blue smoke in your face, disoriented you, and now I am standing over you victorious. I have a couple of other questions as it relates to the topics du jour that I will get to before the end of this. But you mentioned that your father never got to see you perform. You've had your family give you the proud moments, and that one is absent in a way that you would have liked because he meant what to you along this path?
Oh no, just I think he would have got a real kick out of the fact that things have gone so well, and like he was so optimistically supportive from the very beginning. Like even when we were on the phone and I was telling him like, oh yeah, I've started doing a little bit of stand up and stuff like that, and he was like, oh really, like such a genuine interest and such an excitement about it that would have been something nice for him to see, you know. But yeah, it's tough because losing my dad, and especially like when I lost my dad, I feel like was also that like sort of formative time, because I was just really getting going career wise and everything, and it really has shaped, at least to the best of my ability, how I treat people close to me and try to treat everybody as much as humanly possible. If like you could like really lose someone, you could have the last conversation with somebody and not know it's going to be the last one. And so it's important to like let people know how you feel, and to be as generous as possible with with all of the good things that you have to say. You know what I mean? You never want to lose somebody and not have them know exactly how much you care about them, how much you enjoy their company, what they mean to you, all this stuff. And so like that was like one of my big like regrets, I guess, or like I think everything happens on time, but I wish I would have started, quote unquote, like making it a little bit sooner so he could have seen some of it, you know?
But you also can't learn until you learn what the
Yeah.
impact is of grief changing your perspective on that, because my guess is you were young and probably bulletproof enough to not consider that that's what was going to visit. The last conversation is going to suddenly visit is not a way to carry yourself until you felt it one time, and then you only have to feel it one time.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
when
exactly.
because it hurts so much that you won't
Yeah,
you
yeah.
won't take it that much for granted. Like there's real life wisdom in death that way. I've found in the early stages of grief. I don't know how much that has to do with you choosing therapy, espousing therapy.
Yeah, I think therapy. Okay, there are two things that I think are important about therapy. One, I think that even if you have what you feel like is a handle on an issue or some problems or something like that, I do think that talking it out sometimes, like sometimes I will really think I know how I feel about something, and then when I talk to anybody about it, having to say out loud the thing that I've been thinking in my head is a different barrier to break than people recognize sometimes.
It's sharing versus being alone with something.
Exactly, exactly. And so it's like, I think that while therapy doesn't replace these things, I do think we're in this sort of era of isolation. We're living in like an epidemic of loneliness, and so I think therapy sometimes is just the first step in like, it's not necessarily quite the same as community building, because I understand it's like you
pretty
go in there,
close.
you pay a therapist, this person's being paid to listen to you, so it takes a little bit of the softness and the sweetness out of sharing sometimes, I guess, because there's a little bit of money involved. But at the same time, I think that even people who have community, who have whatever their religious leader is, or who do have people to talk to, sometimes you have your people to talk to about certain things. And not that you should be putting everyone in buckets, but like, here's someone who is not, it's literally their professional job to not judge you or to not bring any preconceived notions about you when you share something. And so I think that therapy is important for those two reasons. One, a lot of people don't have someone to talk to. Even if you have someone to talk to, sometimes they're not the person you want to share that thing with, because you're worried about them looking at you differently, or no matter how much they say, they won't judge. There's something about what you have to say that carries a certain weight that can't be taken back. So I think it's good for those two main reasons. But I'm also like, I don't know how to put this without sounding like I'm anti-therapy now, but I do think that therapy is only, to me, worth it with the effective practice of what you do outside of it. And so I think that, I've known people who have been in therapy for years and they're still like kind of jerks. And it is not as if it is a chemical imbalance thing or a prescription thing, or it's like, no, you go to therapy and then you tell your therapist how you were terrible to everybody, and then you don't change the behavior. Feels like therapy's not really working for you. It almost feels like you're not going at this point if you're just going to go and,
Well, if you're just going to rummage around in your bin of narcissism and self-involvement, as opposed to going there to get the tools open-mindedly to see yourself clearly, to have tools so that you can go to work on yourself, on the things. I liken it to just, why wouldn't, if someone has some expertise, someone you trust has some expertise in me, they can feed my narcissism and help me be a better me, get me closer to the things that I want to be. Like that's, and make me more gentle with myself, and all the things that you need to learn because you don't quite know everything about yourself that you think you do.
And it's also like, I'm not saying it as if it's some sort of catch-all. For me, I looked at it as like, I do think it could and does at times help me become even better at what I do, because like you said, with tools, right? Give you either give you the tools or show you the tools. I think the same way that a drill will never be a hammer, like not really. You can use a drill as a
Yeah.
hammer if you want, and you can make a hammer a drill if you want. It's not going to be that effective. But if you go somewhere and they're like, this is actually a hammer, you should use this to hammer things, now you and the tool are more effective. And that's kind of how I look at it, is that, I'm not, it's not as if I go every week or even every month. I think that I have a decent, and this may be misguided of me, but I do think I have a decent barometer for when I should be going and when it's time to talk to somebody, and when it's, when I feel like, all right, like it's not about going until you feel okay, because you can still go and feel okay. I think it can still be very important, but I think knowing when it's serving you versus like you're just doing it to do it. And so I feel like sometimes if I think I'm gonna be just going to like do it in a way that's not productive, I do take a little break.
You used a phrase, epidemic of loneliness, and I think you have a chance because of the style, the way you're doing this, generationally, new voice. You have a chance to speak to some things in comedy that are new because pandemic is new, loneliness of pandemic and everything that changed with the anger of the loneliness. I just got done talking to Lewis Black, who said he could
Oh
be at
yeah.
home for like 12 hours. And then he started looking at all his problems and he thought he was going crazy because of what the pandemic did to us. I read the other day a stat like 74% of adult American men feel moderate to high levels of loneliness. The epidemic of loneliness. It's new, isn't it?
I mean, I don't know how new it is, but I know it's been building up, and it needed something like the pandemic to fully be exposed, because I think that before anyone was ever talking about anything 2020, even in 2016, you could feel a little something like bubbling up, and there were just practices that we had of like how social had the opportunity to connect everyone, as far as like all the apps, all the different ways of communicating, but then all of it was also very isolating in and of itself. You could feel like you had a bunch of little interactions with people all day while not having a single intimate conversation with anyone. And so I think that that's something that I think was gearing up, that just like, I mean, even if you want to talk about pollution, 2020 exposed a lot of stuff, because just people being like inside for 2 months and not having the air, and the pictures, the aerial pictures of cities was like incredibly clean. It looked like whole cities were healed in a month. And so I think that as far as an epidemic of loneliness, there are certain practices that are going to be really hard to get out of, just because it's human nature. Like, for instance, even with the phone, there's that phantom reach. Have you heard about that?
I haven't heard about that, but I've
Okay.
done it.
The phantom reach is this thing where, let's say you are on like a cruise ship and you have no reception and your phone is useless and you have all these people around you to talk to. Even if you are, whether you're a kid or you're middle aged, there will be times throughout the day, just because of how much we're on our phones, that you'll reach for your phone and you may even open it and then be like, oh wait, yeah, I can't do anything with this. And those are some of the only indicators that we have of how much we're actually on our phone. Because if you ask someone how much they're on their phone, they might say a lot, or they might give you a certain like metric, but it wasn't until Apple itself decided to expose our screen time and tell us every week how much we had been on our phone, that people really got a glimpse of like, oh wow, like 5 hours a day. And it's not, and especially if their phone isn't how they do their job, that really tells you something. And so I think that the epidemic of loneliness is here, and I don't know when it's going to go away, but I think that when you build community and you build culture around connection, I think that you start to have like little seeds that you plant that will bloom later, that will be a practice of like, okay, maybe I'm on my phone, but I'm on my phone talking to this new friend that I made, that I enjoy the company of, even if it's online, that I trust with things about myself, and that I can set up a time to maybe meet in person and spend time together in real community and connection in my home, or something, make a memory with this person. Because I don't think it's bad. I know people from all different walks of life who are like for whatever reason, cut off from community, right? Maybe they don't feel like anyone around them gets them. Maybe they just feel like, yeah, that's sort of odd one out. And so it takes the internet to connect them with another odd one out somewhere else. And then those two
It passes for intimacy.
100%. And sometimes it is the placeholder that people need. So I'm not saying it's all or nothing. I think that sometimes it is how you build the connections that are going to get you that next level that sometimes even saves your life, because then when you do maybe, let's say, move out of your hometown, or you get the opportunity to see this person in person, that's the real, like, in real life experience stuff that we need from, like, a biological sense. Even that's the big
to feel human.
Absolutely. So I think that to me, it's something that now more people are catching on to, like with a lot of things. I think more or less, obviously there's like disinformation everywhere, but I think that because of how people feel, people are waking up to things that you wouldn't have been able to convince them of maybe 7 years ago. You know what I mean? I think it took things like the pandemic, and I think it took having to, like, even if I know it was different per state, but like all around the world with some of these lockdowns, I'm not even talking about necessarily the merits of lockdown or the efficacy of just it saving lives and stuff. I'm talking about in the actual practice of a lockdown, there were a lot of people who had to, for the first time ever, especially as Americans, with how much we work and how much we are constantly stimulated and how much we create, that had to, like, stop and, like, maybe take a good, long, hard look at themselves. And that's not always, I'm not saying that's like made the whole thing worth it or something. I'm just saying that by and large, that happening, it made people realize, oh, I don't have any real friends. Like now that I'm not working and I just have to sit here remember when we thought it was gonna be 2 weeks? Remember that first, like, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
I just have to sit here for 2 weeks and I don't have anybody to call. Like, now that I'm not working,
and I don't use my phone as a phone. I don't want to call anybody. I don't take calls on my phone. I don't use my phone as a phone.
And remember, the first 2 weeks, people treated that like, oh, okay, it's going to be a little time off, right? So then that first week was all well and good. People were like, oh, hey, people, it's so funny too, because it was like, people literally were like not using it for what it was supposed to be for, because it was like, 2 weeks, we're going to shut everything down, see what happens with this whole little virus thing, right? And then people were like, man, 2 weeks off, come over to my house. And it's like, that's not quite it. But I do think that after the first week, when watching all the movies gets boring and, like, staying in every night, and you finally have, like, an argument with your spouse or whatever, I think that, like, really being, like, trapped and having to sit with yourself was something that a lot of people weren't prepared for, obviously, but it's something that exposed a lot of the loneliness that people feel. And so coming out of that, you obviously want there to be the opportunity for people to connect, and I think that that's a place where post pandemic, post, like, lockdown COVID stuff, we're still failing people, because there should be more places to go just to be in community with people that aren't just church, that aren't just this, like, weekly occurrence, somewhere you can go at any point that's not necessarily a bar, that you can be in communion with people.
A bar is lighter fluid on loneliness.
Yeah. It's like you're there with all these people, but now it's like, all right, even bars have their own dynamics where it's like, let's say I'm lonely, so I want to go to where people are, so I go to a bar. Well, now anyone you approach is, one, they're going to think you have some sort of agenda. I'm approaching you because I'm asking you out. Can I buy you a drink? Whatever the thing is. When maybe you are just trying to strike up conversation, which sometimes is
Right.
more off-putting. Sometimes people are like, oh, I'm just trying to be your friend. It's like, get out of here.
Don't need a friend right now. Before I get you out of here, and before we get to the last two topics du jour, I will tell everybody that tickets for Josh's 2025 Flowers Tour are available at joshjohnsоncomedy.com, and you can subscribe to his YouTube channel at Josh Johnson Comedy. Luigi Mangione.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got? It's a lot. There's a lot there, and I was mortified but understood about a general reaction filled with so much desperation from people who are tired of being bleeped by insurance companies, by government, by rich people, by health insurance, that they just want to kill somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things, Luigi, is that I think that every sort of established narrative that's been tried that they've tried to create around him is failing because of people's disdain for the system. And so I think that's something that somehow a lot of news and a lot of like officials still aren't getting, you know? Because I don't know if you saw the picture of him being escorted to the courthouse.
Yeah, the Hannibal
They made it
Lecter.
look like The Dark Knight. They made it look like a poster.
It was amazing.
And I'm like, that's such a absolute read on how they've misconstrued the situation. Because if you are an insurance company that's trying to gain favor with the people again, and this will never happen because there's boards and there's like C-suites and there's too much money at play to like do this. But I don't know if you remember when Earth Day was a big deal. So like we're talking like 2002, right? Earth Day was such a big deal.
The world could have been a lot different if Al Gore had won and wanted to change the climate and succeeded in doing something about what would be protecting the Earth.
Yeah, because like Earth Day, I remember, I don't know what company it was, so I don't want to lie on them, but I think it was like Walmart or something. Every company would have these Earth Day initiatives where they would be like, we save this much energy, or we use these fewer resources on Earth Day, right? Now, obviously, what they're doing is that they're going bare bones for a day so that they can get the PR of like saving a little energy or whatever.
Of going bare bones for a day.
But the problem is when they did that thing, people were like, oh, well, why don't you just do that all the time, right? But if you're an insurance company trying to gain favor with the people again after something like Luigi, you could just be like, hey, we're cutting everybody's rates for 6 months. I don't think people realize how little people need who are already scraping by to survive. I don't think they realize how little they need to go on longer. And I'm not saying this from a perspective of manipulation. I'm just saying it as someone who was in that situation of like, you don't really know where rent's coming from. You don't really know, you haven't like fully figured out how you're going to like eat, especially eat well, right? You're just worried about the next meal. Someone giving you the opportunity to get ahead and get 2 meals ahead is huge. It's bigger than I think even a billionaire can fathom, because a billionaire has all the money. A multimillionaire has all the money that they're ever going to need for the rest of their life. They actually can't spend it. They can't spend it in their lifetime.
No, that's where the disconnect is. It can feel like caring to simply not feel hopeless for 5 seconds.
Yeah, and so I think that with Luigi, you know, I think that he's going to end up being more symbolic than anything he actually said in his manifesto or anything that he actually says in court.
He's going to end up being a vigilante hero / saint / whatever. Hannibal Lecter, cool, because he defied the system and he broke the rules and he spoke for quote unquote all of us.
I think that, okay, if you could pick anyone out of a history book and actually have like a conversation with them that was in any form, and I'm not necessarily calling Luigi a revolutionary, but I'm saying pick a revolutionary, anyone that you've picked in your head, and you actually got to sit across the table from them and like have lunch, I think it would be a pretty disappointing lunch. I don't think that like, do you know what I mean? Like just because they were an
revolutionaries don't know that they're revolutionaries while they're in the middle of the revolution always.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, I was dodging bullets. Like I was just trying to like live, you know? And so I think that no matter what Luigi is actually like as a person, and no matter what happens with his actual case, I think that if you pull any person and you separate them from what they are symbolic of and have a real conversation with them, they're going to let you down in some form, right? Because there were already people that like weirdly, I only say weird because I don't understand the logic, not because I'm saying you have to believe what I believe, but there were even people who weirdly were like on the CEO's side again when they found out Luigi actually came from money. Like there's always going to be, there's no perfect
All of these
symbol.
things are clouded and stained by our own prejudices when viewing them.
Yeah, so I think that with Luigi, that court sketch artist is going to have their work cut out for them, not making him look hotter and hotter every picture. It's going to be tough, you know, because even, I don't know if you saw that. Did you see the one that when they took the picture of him, I think it was just his arraignment, and he was looking over his shoulder and he was brooding. I was like, what is he doing?
Brooding and sensual.
Like, honestly,
flirting with a public that wishes the bad boy murderer to be everything they wish him to be.
Like, they low key, just to break him even, they're literally going to have to put that Hannibal Lecter thing on him just so you can't see as much of his face. Because every picture, he's just like this man,
smoldering.
Yeah. And I'm like, who smolders over being on trial for murder? Like, you would not catch me smoldering at all. I would be crying. I'd be in there like, hey, I'll snitch on anybody. I didn't do it. Please. This man is over here quiet. And then he'll cut a smile to his lawyer for a second. They get a picture of the smile. It's like,
no, I've seen him wink, and I hear the ding on one of the sparkling teeth when he turns to the paparazzi.
Yeah.
I have not talked to you about sports, so I'm going to take a random sports topic and throw it in your lap because we're in Miami. I don't know if you know anything about sports. I have no earthly idea what your sports knowledge is or isn't. But do you have any opinion on Tyreek Hill and the Miami Dolphins, the season that began here? I'll do it locally. Began with an arrest outside of the stadium, and then I don't know what you do or don't know about Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, so I know that when it comes to sports, I only know how the ball should be shaped. Do you know what I mean? Like that is a baseball.
So that's all you have.
Football,
all right.
right?
So you don't know, but you know who Tyreek Hill is?
Well, I knew Tyreek Hill. I knew the Dolphins. And I knew the arrests that happened. And I feel like, all right, I do think that once again, just like we started talking about billionaires and money and stuff like that, I do think that there is a certain amount of money that, at least in your mind, allows you the privileges of like moving the way you've seen other people move or the way you think they move, right? Because when you watch the whole video, I even talked about it on stage. It's like I said all of my like big thoughts about it on stage, which is probably more than you have time for. But I think
about what, like police brutality or any of that?
Yeah, I talked about him and I talked about the police because I think that even the way it started is like it starts in this way that's like did you watch the whole video?
Yes.
Yeah, so initially it's like boom boom boom, lowers his window, don't tap my window like that, and I'm like, that to me that's like, all right, I understand you're a millionaire, but now I'm very nervous. That when you hit that button like that, I've hit it before on people. I've never hit it on the police, right? But then you get the police pulling them out of the car and sitting them down and everything, and you know, getting them on the ground and stuff. And there's some of it you can tell there's a shade of it in there that's just like, you hurt my feelings, you disrespected me, and now you have to pay in some form, even though that thing in and of itself is not illegal, right? And then you also saw people trying to check on what was going on, and the way they even spoke to those people, or the fact that they were going to arrest everybody who stopped and asked the question, hey, we're headed to Prague, what do you do? Can I help? Can I mediate in some way? And so it does make me nervous that there is no... It's a scary thing when there's no mediation with the person who's supposed to be keeping the peace. I think that is something that needs to be addressed in every police department, no matter what. It's like, if the same way that like you as an individual, right? You might be like righteously indignant. You might be ready to let somebody have it. You talking to them in the parking lot and you're just like, and I'm talking about, there's a very different thing when you point like this and you point like this, right? Like you're doing this pointing, you're over here, hey, right? And now you turn around and all these cameras are pointed at you. All these cell phones are pointed at you. You as a regular person, that makes you go, maybe I'm being out of pocket right now. Maybe I seem crazy. And the fact that like there is no, as a collective people around an officer who aren't trying to get involved. Once again, I'm not talking about somebody trying to like start a fight with a cop or attacking a cop or cursing at a cop or anything. I'm talking about if everyone around you, if you're a police officer and you're throwing somebody on the ground and you're putting your knee on their back or whatever, and everyone around is like, hey. I think that there's this thing there in policing sometimes where to back down or to stop or to like mediate the situation is to admit some sort of guilt or be wrong. And it's not that at all, because as a cop, I'm not a cop and I haven't been in cop-like situations, but I imagine sometimes you show up and you don't know what's going to happen. That's my general takeaway from what policing is like. You show up, you have no idea what's going to happen. That's why they give you the gun. Maybe we're at a 10 out of 10 situation. Maybe we're at a 1 out of 10. We're going to give you the gun no matter what, right? So you show up and you have the gun and you don't know if it's going to be a 1 or a 10 out of 10.
You never know.
And then you find out through talking to someone, it's actually a 5. All right, we're at a 5. I don't even need the gun, right? But if you show up to everything or you take everything, maybe it was a 5 and then you yourself took it to a 10 because you were like, this looks like a 10. I'm going to go ahead and just pull the gun so everybody knows I'm ready for a 10. That's the type of stuff that I feel like, at least in rhetoric and in the process of policing, I think is dangerous because I'm a pretty passive person. I try to understand all sides of a thing, but I also can see where in that specific situation where it became less about here's what you did wrong, here's where you broke the law, or here's the citation I need to give you. And it became more about respect me. And I think that once we get into a place where it's all about respect me, that's where I'm talking about you took it from, it was a 5 and you made it a 10. Uh-huh. And in this case, anytime it's traffic, it should be a 3. Like, sure, if you're speeding, you could have hit somebody, you could have killed them. This is why I pulled you over. You were speeding. I got to give you your ticket. Don't be a jerk, right?
Right.
But like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes things get taken to a 10 that were so clearly a 2.
You're right. But while I would be willing to basically say I'm willing to make the absolute edict that everything in traffic, no disputes, is a 3. Once you press the roll up the window on, do you know how long I've been famous, officer? Mm-hmm. That escalates. If everyone comes to their own conclusions about what their prejudices are on a situation, that disrespect right there is going to escalate. You're playing lotto with cops on where am I going to hit this cop in a sensitive spot that's going to turn that 3 into a 9.
Yeah, and I think that's where the thing deviates for me, because I'm like, okay, if you are a police officer, the best way I can describe at least the public's perception of you is that you are in like the peacekeeping business of customer service, right? Like I call you when somebody's in my house, but it's still like this customer service position, right? And I don't know if you've ever worked customer service, but I've worked in restaurants, I've worked in grocery stores, and sometimes I get the do you know who I am? And then I have to be like, I don't know who you are, but I still have to do my job, because then now I cannot now be out of pocket because they were rude to me. Like, I'm working at a grocery store and they hit me with the do you know who I am? And if I'm like, you know what, I don't really care who you are, it's 1784 and I told you I don't have change for 100. So either come up with a 20 or get out of here. That gets me fired.
That's right.
So it's like, I totally get that. And that's why the roll up window thing for me, I was just like, like I was like, my man, oh no. Like, I thought it was going to be a way worse video when somebody was like, have you seen the Tyreek Hill thing? And I started watching it and the click, and because it went up a couple times. Yeah. It didn't go up just one. Like, this is the thing with once is I'm rich, right? Once is like, I'm a rich man. I could see Jeff Bezos, Elon hitting them with the once, right?
That's right.
They wouldn't be driving themselves.
No, they would not be.
But like, I could hear them from the back of my head. I could hear them tell the driver to roll up the window, and then he nervously goes, I'm so sorry. Yeah. That being said, roll it up multiple times that's a rough move.
It's aggressive.
I was like, oh no. That's money.
It's defiant, it's disrespectful, and he's been famous for a long time, and he's got bad judgment, and he's just generally reckless.
Yeah, because like also Tyreek Hill's not necessarily the most sympathetic guy to like go to bat for anyway.
He is not.
So
no.
then I was like, I mean, there's no perfect victim, but at the same time, I was like, guys, if this is the same guy I've heard about with other things, now you got me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not a perfect victim, but he is a pretty imperfect victim. He's really good at the imperfect parts of this, and he can be right and he can be wrong. Josh's 2025 Flowers Tour tickets are available at joshjohnsоncomedy.com. joshcomedy.com, and you should subscribe to his YouTube channel at Josh Johnson Comedy. It was a pleasure. Thank you
so much. Thanks for having me.